haven't checked the weather yet, but I know it is the perfect day to chat about adult Jewish literature. I'm Cheryl Stahl. Thanks for joining me here at Nice Jewish Books. It is once again my great pleasure to welcome Rena Citrin, the chair of the Association of Jewish Libraries Jewish Fiction Award Committee. Welcome, Rena.
Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for inviting me back.
Well, I am so excited to hear about this year's award winners. So, before I start bouncing out of my skin, who are they?
All right. Well, we just had our committee had a monumental task ahead of us. And we decided after reading between 60 and 70 books that Kaplan's Plot by Jason Diamond was our big winner. And there's so many wonderful things about that book that I want to share with you. And we have 3 honor books, which are also extraordinary. Fagin the Thief by Alison Epstein, and I know it's getting recognition all over, well-deserved. Sisters of Fortune by Esther Chiabar, also a great book, and The Maiden and Her Monster by Mandy Martinez. So I think we have something on our list for everyone.
Excellent. And I'm both delighted and embarrassed to say that Kaplan's Plot was not really on my radar. So I'm really tickled to, learn about a brand new to me book. So let's back up a step before we talk about each book and tell me about the committee, about the award, how it started and how it works.
Well, the award isn't all that old for the Association of Jewish Libraries, and I didn't do my homework, and I can't tell you the exact date it began. It is designed to honor excellence in Jewish fiction in any particular year. And there are other award groups that do the same thing. There's, the Jewish Book Council and the Sophie Brody. But I think the feeling was that there's room for another award, and there's enough excellence in Jewish literature out there that it gives us an opportunity to honor more books. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Absolutely. I just took a quick peek at the website, and it was established in 2017.
Oh, okay. So it's 9 years old. And Dan Wyman Books sponsors it. And we're very grateful to him for his generosity.
Great. How many people are on the committee?
Well, we have a small but mighty group. Debbie Abacassis from Montreal, who's a professor of literature there. Nicole Coover-Thompson from not far from where I am in Chicago is a library media specialist at a high school in Elgin, I believe. Sarah Feldman from Westchester, Massachusetts is a librarian there. Dina Herbert is a librarian for the Library of Congress, and Tina Lerno, our newest member, is on the staff of the Los Angeles Public Library. So we have some really great readers and a diverse group of readers. And it really influences our deliberation very much to have people coming from all different walks of life. I myself am a retired children's librarian. And for many years, I only read adult books in the summertime when I had free time. But this has been a wonderful opportunity for me as well.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I was on the committee several years ago, and I guess for 2 years, and just loved it. Yeah. So let's do a deeper dive. Tell me about Kaplan's Plot.
Well, Kaplan's Plot is the debut novel of Jason Diamond, who is a very, very talented writer. And it's a very Chicago story, which we thought would be fitting for the location of our convention coming up in a few months. But the location is not enough to recommend the book. The book is brilliant and layered and just completely captivating. And it's the story of generations of a Jewish family, and they are interwoven in the most creative way. It starts with Elijah Mendes, who's about 35, he made a fortune and lost a fortune in tech in Silicon Valley, and he comes home to Chicago, kind of with his tail between his legs, and ostensibly to help his mother, Eve, who is a nationally recognized poet, but who's dying of cancer. And he comes back home with all of the layers of complexity of his own home life and his own past to find his mother, who is as secretive and as quixotic as ever. And he wants to know about his family's history, and he's encouraging her to write a memoir, which apparently she has done, but isn't sharing with him. And he gets involved in the family story in the most circuitous way. His mother, who is dying, has piles of mail that she's not opened, and he starts to open it. And he finds letter after letter after letter from the Chicagoland Hebrew Benevolent Society, the cemetery plot group, saying that family owns this plot. What do you want to do with it? It's neglected. What should we do? And the mother says, don't, just forget about it. Well, we just forget about it. They keep writing to us. And he on his own goes out to the plot. And one side is the health club, another side is a condominium, and there's this little cemetery and this little building for the Benevolent Society filled with Orthodox Jews in the middle. And he finds that there is a mausoleum belonging to his family, his mother's family, the Kaplan family. And he delves into their story because it's a very enigmatic story, and it begins. So we have these two parallel stories of Elijah and his mother today, which was, the early part of the 2000s, and her father's story and her uncle's story from the beginning of the 20th century. And they were both boys who ran away, were put on a boat to leave their town of Odessa because of pogroms. And the adults were to follow, and of course they never did. They were murdered. And they're kind of mentored on this journey once they land in New York by the brother of a gangster from Chicago. They have a sister who left years earlier who lives in Chicago. They have no idea. They speak no English. They have no idea of anything. They land in New York, and this guy says, I'll take you to Chicago. And Chicago for Jews, especially Eastern European Jews at that time, was Maxwell Street. And it was a very vibrant, kind of like the Lower East Side of New York, smaller, but that mentality, that kind of setting. And these two young boys, Yitz, the older one, Sal, the younger one, and they are delivered to the apartment of a minor Jewish gangster in Chicago. And there were, this was apparently, that's how some people made their way, and based upon some fact. And the gangster takes them in, but you don't get room and board for nothing. You have to
Of
work.
course.
And they are given jobs to their various levels as they grow older. And Yitz takes to it, and he sees his way through this kind of Jewish mafia, which is working alongside the mob, the named guys, the made men in Chicago. And everybody, and the Maxwell Street belonged to the Jews primarily. And Saul saw himself differently. He saw himself in the footsteps of his father and his grandfather, who were very respected butchers back in Odessa, and that's what he wants to become, and he does. And he leads, he goes down the straight path. And Yitz, on the other hand, becomes a gangster in his own right. And there is generational trauma, and I don't want to give anything away about how Yitz and Saul lead their lives and eventually die, but Eve, Elijah's mother's father, is Yitz, the gangster. And she doesn't really know about his story. She only knows he died when she was a relatively young girl. Her mother, who was a very kind of, emotional woman, committed suicide, or so they
Hmm.
believe. And when she was a young girl, and this is also an important part of the story because it actually wasn't a suicide. And eventually, Elijah uncovers the story of his grandfather. And it's a reckoning for Eve, and it's a reckoning for both Elijah and his mother. And they right the wrongs of the past in various ways. Money's owed to certain people. And the benevolent society goes on. And that's, I don't want to give too much away, but it is a very atmospheric novel of Chicago and how Jewish families evolved. And it's contemporary, it's historical, and it's really good.
Sounds wonderful. Well, I'm definitely putting it on the top of my find a copy and read list.
Okay, please do. I think you'll like it, and especially you're going to be in Chicago this June, right? You're coming to the
I
convention.
really hope so. I really hope so.
All right. Well, one of the things we want to have there is a walking tour, so of Jewish Chicago. So it'll be very relevant for Kaplan's plot.
Okay, and so now the three honor books.
Well, the probably the most well-known, and you've probably read it already, is Fagin the Thief by Alison Epstein. Have you read it?
I not only read it, but I interviewed her for the podcast. We had a wonderful conversation.
Oh, well, she is brilliant, and she has done something completely unique and really rather breathtaking, in my opinion. She has taken one of Dickens's most iconic characters, who we only know in Oliver Twist as the Jew, and that's the only way that he is referred to, as the Jew. And that's not an honorific from Dickens, to say the least. And what is so extraordinary about what Alison Epstein has done is that she's taken this character who's just really a bare outline, is really a stereotype, and she's given him a full blown persona. So we know he now has a first name. She names him Jacob. And we know who his mother was. We know what happened to his father. We know that he's Yiddish speaking. We know that he knows a fair amount about the Torah because he went to Cheder. We know that he has a moral code, which is probably very much rooted in his upbringing, in his being a Jew. But circumstances were pretty lousy. His mother dies, and he is really thrust out on his own. And that wasn't unusual. There were lots of orphans in Regency London, the London that Dickens describes so well. And Epstein gets that same description of place and time so brilliantly. And you go into this squatter's apartment, a squatter's house that's in the bowels of London, where young boys who are orphans and have no education and have no way to make their way go to Fagin to be taken in and to be trained as thieves, as pickpockets, but to be sheltered. And one of those people who he does shelter, who he very much butts heads with, is Bill Sikes, who's one of the major minor characters of Oliver Twist. And we learn more about him and the women in their lives. And we walk the streets with Fagin and the boys, and we realize that Fagin is not just a stereotype. And that's one of the great honors that Epstein has given him. He is a fully realized person of his time. I don't want to give away the ending because it is extraordinary, I think.
And one thing that I loved about it is that it isn't a redemption tale. It wasn't, oh, look what a wonderful person he really was. But as you said, it just makes him a well rounded, multifaceted person.
Exactly. You know, he wasn't just evil. He wasn't the conniving Jew, and that was it. No, there was compassion there, but he was a thief, and he did wrong things, and he stole from people, and he encouraged others to do the same. The question I get from so many people is, do you have to read Oliver Twist to appreciate this book? I think the answer is no. I didn't read Oliver Twist again. I probably read it when I was 16, so I have just a very vague.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, yeah, I think I read it in high school, but that was quite a while ago.
You know, I should have read it again, but it's not necessary. It really isn't necessary. So, but everybody should read it. It's one of the great books of this year.
Great. Okay, and next on your list?
Okay, next is The Sisters of Fortune by Esther Chebar. And I call it a guilty pleasure because it has all those elements of almost a romance novel, but it is so much more. I don't want to just say that it's a romance novel. It's not. It's really not. It's a story for our time, even though it's it concentrates on a minority community within the larger Jewish community, Syrian Jews in New York, who are secular but very traditional, very, very traditional. And we go into that community through the three sisters, three Cohn sisters from the Cohn family. Fortune, the middle sister, who's the obedient one. We meet Nina, the older sister, the rebel, who's 26 and not married yet, and she has cobwebs around her because she's not married yet. And then the beauty, the youngest sister, Lucy, who is a senior in high school and gets by just because she is so magnificently beautiful. And the story is hung on the preparations for Fortune's wedding. She's about to marry Saul Dweck, a really nice young man from a family similar to hers. And he's traditional too. And she's not sure this is what she wants, but the plans proceed every day. They get closer and closer and closer to the wedding. And, she's picking out the presents. And she has this MIL, her mother-in-law, who's this force of nature. And her own family scrambling to pay for all of this because business isn't going so well for her father in his business, which is like a dollar store, a big dollar store on 47th Street. And the mother is a caterer who caters all these really delicious Syrian delicacies out of her kitchen. And the other major character who is just wonderful is the grandmother, Sita, who smokes cigarettes, sits in the kitchen, is a great cook, and dispenses wisdom. And she has real wisdom. And one of her famous sayings is that, where I wrote it down, that there are only two things in a woman's life that should never be empty. I don't know if you remember this one. She says her womb and her freezer. So you always have to, you're going to have babies and you're going to have food on hand to get out and put on the table whenever it's needed. And Fortune isn't quite sure that this is where she wants to go. And there's a dramatic scene at the end. She's in the mikveh the night before the wedding, and she has this epiphany, and she can't go through with it. Well, you can just imagine, everything is in place, and it all starts to unravel. We have the stories of the other two sisters, and they are this triumvirate who are competitive with each other, but are also very much supportive of each other. They're really true sisters. And Nina the rebel finds her way. She goes and works for an indie rock label in Manhattan, and there she meets a guy that she knew years ago from school, who's also Syrian and kind of on the same path. But they're from the same background and they get it. They get each other. And Lucy falls in love and is stepping out with a much older Syrian guy from a wealthier family who's a doctor. She's a senior in high school, and she has this relationship on the side, and finally it becomes public. They get married, and we see life as it really is. And it's just a wonderful book. I just wanted to pull up a stool in the Cohn family's kitchen and watch the food being made. I could smell it, even though I'm not familiar with Syrian food. I want to learn how to make it or find out where to go and buy it, which I don't think in Chicago there are a whole lot of places. And it's a wonderful book. It's just that family story with these compelling characters, and I'd love a sequel. I don't know if she has that in her mind, Esther Chiabar, but she might be done with the characters, but the reader's not.
All right. Well, that's a great testament to the writing that you want to know. You want to keep those characters in your life and figure out what happens with them.
Absolutely. Now, our last winner, and I said we have a range of winners this year, a range of types of books. This one is fantasy, The Maiden and Her Monster by Maddie Martinez, also a debut novel. And full disclosure, I am not a fan of fantasy or science fiction. And there are people on the committee, we meet periodically and we say, what's good, what's not, what do you have to read? What don't you have to read? What can you put in the bottom of the pile? And we had several members of our committee said, you must read The Maiden and Her Monster. It is so good. So, okay, I'm going to do it.
Well, full disclosure from me, that's my favorite genre.
Oh, okay. So did you read it?
I love science fiction and fantasy. I just bought it. I got it in the mail a day or two ago, so not yet.
Okay. All right. Well, then you will really like it. So anyway, you have this invented world, which is very much like what one would imagine, I would imagine the Middle Ages to be, where Jews live in this very contained kind of community surrounded by Gentiles, kind of like the Pale of the Settlement. And they keep to themselves and try to survive as best they can in whatever trades they can have. But every so often, like we know, the Gentiles would rise up for whatever reason, based upon anti-Semitism, and there would be pogroms. And that's happening during this period of time as well. So the Jewish religion is called Yahadi. There's lots of language based upon Hebrew adjacent words. So, which most people, I think, can figure out. And there, of course, is a golem. And the golem is not your regular golem. One of the things that, what really propels the story is that there is a monster in the woods outside of the village. And this monster is capturing and killing Jewish girls who venture into the woods. And the woods are very foreboding. You should not go into the woods. Well, of course, where do some people go? They go into the woods. And the men of the village put these hunting parties together to capture this monster. And alongside all of this there's something called kefish, which is the Yahadi magic. And certain people, I guess, can learn it, can perform it, can integrate it into their lives. It's not clear who. exactly in the beginning. But these men, the men of the village, are not successful in capturing the monster. And things get worse and worse and worse. And our protagonist is a young woman in her late teens named Malka. She has two sisters, and her mother is a healer, and which means she's an herbalist, and she goes out into the woods and gathers herbs, and she's the person who people come to. There aren't real doctors. And her mother is at one point captured by the priest of the church and is going to be killed. And Malka says she will go and capture the monster. She will do that. And she's going to go into the woods, and she has some sense of what Kefish magic is. And she's accompanied by Amnon, this young man in the village who is in love with her. He's a fisherman, and they go out looking for Malka's mother. I don't want to give any more away except that they do meet the golem slash monster. And this is a very unusual golem. The golem, one of the best scenes, and I really like this one, is she emerges, and the golem's a woman, and she emerges from a gigantic tree in this dark, dense forest that opens up with like teeth. And she comes out of this, and the golem is half human and half stone, and has Emmet written across her forehead, and on one of her arms is written Shoresh, meaning root in Hebrew, and she is rooted to the trees of the forest. And it's very creative the way that Martinez has created this character. So she's half human, she's half stone, and it's also a sapphic tale. Malka finds that she really isn't in love with Amnon, but she is with the golem. I'm going to leave it there, and people should read it.
Excellent. Well, I'm very much looking forward to it. Rena, thank you so much for joining me today. All the books sound amazing, and I can't wait to read the ones that I haven't read yet.
You know, there are lots of other really good books this year that didn't make our winners list, but I think are noteworthy. Can I just mention a couple of them to you?
Sure.
All right. Well, I loved also Happy New Year's by Maya Arad, which is this epistolatory novel written in letters by a Israeli Jewish woman who writes a New Year's letter to each of her classmates from her teaching cohort. And it goes over 50 years of letters, and it's really, really good. And Arad gets Jewish women, and she certainly gets older Jewish women in her writing, and I recommend that one highly.
Yeah, I spoke with her last year about her previous book, spacing out on the name, but
The Hebrew Teacher.
yeah, she's a wonderful writer. Yes, The Hebrew Teacher.
Right. She is a wonderful, wonderful writer. And this is only her second book translated into English. So people should really pick it up. I read it with my senior book group, and everyone loved it. Another book that is not a great book, but it's worth reading because it's really relevant to our time, is Kitty Zeldis's One of Them. And it's the story of a girl after World War II, an American girl, from a kind of an upper class Jewish family who goes to Vassar, and she passes as a non-Jew. And I thought it was so interesting because I'm reading so much now about Jewish students on campus who face anti-Semitism. And many are now saying they're trying to pass as non-Jews. And this is the story of that from the 1940s. And early 50s. And it's really worth looking at because it has real parallels to our time. And the last one I want to recommend is Unfinished Acts of Wild Creation by Sarah Yam.
Yeah, I spoke with her and I loved that book also.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't it? It's really a fascinating, completely different kind of novel with characters who are complicated. And but true to themselves and who grow and develop, and you just want to know, them. You want to see what happens to them. So
wonderful.
I recommend it too.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. I hope I'll see you this summer at the AJL conference. And
absolutely,
if not, I'll talk to you next year about the 2026 books.
Well, you won't be talking to me because I have to cycle off the committee, but you will be talking to our new incoming chair, Debbie Abacassis, and she is fabulous. And I know we'll have great books for next year too.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks again, Rena.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
If you are interested in any of the books we discussed today, you can find them at your favorite board and brick or online bookstore or at your local library. Thanks to Dianki for use of his Freilich, which definitely makes me happy. This podcast is a project of the Association of Jewish Libraries, and you can find more about it at www.jewishlibraries.org/nicejewishbooks. I would like to thank AJL and my podcast mentor, Heidi Rabinowitz. Keep listening for the promo for her latest episode.
This is Caroline Husen-Pritchard. I'm the author of The Keeper of Stories. I'm so looking forward to our conversation on the Book of Life podcast. And I'd like to dedicate our episode to the people of Minnesota who are resisting fascism and who are standing against ICE attacks on their neighbors and communities. We are so grateful we see you, and thank you for all you're doing every day.
This is Selena Alco, and I'm the illustrator of The Keeper of Stories. I'll be joining you soon on the Book of Life podcast, and I'd like to dedicate my episode to 3 of my mother's closest friends, Lucy, Mira, and Valerie, who all recently passed away. May their memories be blessings. They were all Jewish women of the book.
The Book of Life is the sister podcast of Nice Jewish Books. I'm your host, Heidi Rabinowitz, and I podcast about Jewish Kidlit. Join me to hear my February 2026 conversation with Caroline Husen-Pritchard and Selena Alco about The Keeper of Stories at bookoflifepodcast.substack.com.